10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 412. Hey, everybody, welcome back to episode 412 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. We are continuing our series on giant steps this week. And this week, we're actually doing kind of a lot with this. We're dealing with a lot of chords, but I've got a really important concept that can really help you along the way of using basically every single chord that is in the original version of this. So, to quickly recap what we've gone over, the first week in episode one of this series, we stripped basically everything away and we were practicing playing over giant steps in three different major keys. Then last week, we started to introduce the five chord in some select places of the form. And now this week, we're basically going to put everything back in. But again, we're going to talk about an important way to approach soloing now that there's a lot of information on the page that I think is going to really help you. Okay, so grab the PDF that goes along with this week's episode in your appropriate key, and let's start talking about what we added. So, it's pretty obvious if you've been keeping up with the rest of this series. Now, what we have over the first 8 bars is basically every single chord that goes into the original composition. All of those chords that Coltrane originally wrote over this. So if we look at it in concert pitch, we've got B major, and then we go to D, then to G, then to B flat, then to E flat, and then we get a second to catch our breath. Now, this doesn't really sound like giant steps, does it? Bear with me for a second. We're going to address this. Okay, so next we have D to G to B flat to E flat to F sharp to B major. And that basically completes that first 7 bars that are so intimidating. Now, why doesn't that sound like giant steps? And why does the chord sheet, if you're looking at it, not look like giant steps if you were to find it in, a real book or something like that? Well, you'll notice that basically what I've laid out is just triads. So what I was just playing for you was all major triads. And what we know is that giant steps is not comprised of only major triads. You'll also notice that I have some Roman numerals on there. The real way that this would look, if you were looking at it in a real book or something like that, would be B major 7, followed by D7 to G major 7 to B flat 7 to E flat major 7. And what that is functionally is we start in the key of B major, and then we play the 5 chord of G major, and then we resolve to G major. Then we play the 5 chord of E flat major, and then we resolve to E flat major. Then we play the 5 chord of G major, resolve to G major, 5 chord of E flat major, resolve to E flat major, 5 chord of B major, resolve to B major. So it's all just these 5-to-1 relationships, right? That are bringing us through, if you go back to episode 1, those key centers that we were determining make up this entire song, right? So all we're in effect doing is we're adding 5 chords. Now, why have I chosen to remove all those major 7s and 7s? Well, here's sort of the practical part that can really, really help you get into soloing using all of the harmony that's in this tune, if you feel ready for that. What we want to do is we want to strip everything down to its bare essentials. So, what's the similarity between a major seven chord or a dominant seven chord? Well, the similarity is that underneath the seven is a major triad in both cases. So, one of the things that I think really intimidates people about this tune when all the chords are in there is that they're wondering how to use a B major scale to a D mixolydian scale to a G major scale to a B flat mixolydian scale to an E flat major scale. And a scale is a lot of notes. It's a big structure. There's a lot involved. And the other thing about a scale is that, some notes work better than others, right? And I think another thing that people fail to realize is that a D7 chord, if you think about it like this, D, F sharp, A, C, is all of those notes. And in fact, that structure are all inside of a G major scale. That's where that structure comes from. If you go up to the fifth of a G major scale and you play the chord based off of the fifth, you get a D7 chord. So you see, it makes sense to just start with the broad key centers because it removes the intimidation factor. And in general, it works a lot better than people think it's going to when they go, "Oh, you're going to remove all those chords. I'm going to sound really bad." Nope. Most of the time, it actually sounds better. But if we have desires that we want to play in a style that moves from chord to chord, what I suggest is that we start with the smallest viable structure. And in my mind, that is a major triad. So, what if I were to play over the entire tune? I'm going to play one chorus a cappella over the entire form, and I'm only going to use major triads. Let's see. Let's see what happens if I do that. Now, I'm not in any danger of winning any awards for that solo, right? I don't want to put that solo on my record, but I think you would agree that it follows the changes. It's pretty melodic, and it's a great starting point for actually dealing with the full set of changes that comprise this tune. So again, think about what we've done, right? We started with just plain old key centers, and then we took the easier part of the tune, which is the second half, and we put the five chords in there, and that provided us with a little more direction in our playing. And now we're utilizing all the chords, but we're simplifying them. And I'm saying that I really, really do think that you should play with the clearest device, which in my mind is a triad, before you try to do anything else. This is a great testing ground for starting to develop a whole bunch of skills over this tune, but you need to make sure you can get through the harmony. You need to make sure that you understand and can hear where the tune is going before you start dealing with these big, huge structures, which in my mind is a scale. A scale is, one of the bigger structures that we can think about when we're playing Western music. We got these 7, 8 note scales that we're thinking about. I think bringing it down to only 3 notes can really, really do a lot. So that's your assignment for this week. If you feel like you're ready, use the sheet that I prepared for you this week, but only play with triads and see if you can actually get through all that stuff at that slow bossa tempo, uh, and by using triads, but not getting lost and not tripping over yourself. And what you might realize is you thought you had triads down, but you might have to go back and work on a lot of those triads. And you're going to keep discovering all of these different connections between the triads, which is really, really a good thing. So I'm going to give the Patreon members this sheet. And I am also going to, for the $5 members, give you another trading track. But this time I'm going to be trading with you using this triadic way of playing over the first 7 bars. So if you're new to the show, you heard me mention Patreon. We're a listener supported podcast. So people just like you choose to support us with a small monthly donation. And that's what keeps the podcast going and has kept it going for 412 episodes at this point. So you can find out more information, get signed up, get all of those fantastic jazz materials. We have materials that go along with every single one of the 412 episodes that we've done to this point. And you can find those by going to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, clicking on one of the Patreon banners, or simply going to patreon.com and searching for the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. Get yourself signed up to support us, and you get instant access to everything that we've ever done. Quick shout out to some new patrons this week. Thank you to Daniel, Nayland, Jeff, and Thomas. Thank you guys so much for joining up with the family, supporting the podcast, and making sure that this thing keeps rolling. And of course, to all the people that have been supporting us over there, thank you. This show would not be possible without you. So again, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, or patreon.com, search for the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. We'll see you next week with another episode. Hope you're all doing well out there and have a great weekend. Bye, everyone.